one of the fears that I think is biggest when it comes to achieving goals, both professionally and personally, is the fear that we have to give something up.
You can't get to second with one foot on first. You have to give up something over here in order to get to the next base.
I want every single one of those sales reps to make more than I do. That's my goal. Seeing them hit that next level of success where they've succeeded. That is more important to me than the dollar on my paycheck any day of the week.
A lot of times our people that we're mentoring and coaching and training, they have things that are non-sales related that are blocking them and taking mental energy that keeps them from getting to their goals.
Absolutely. Remove the clutter.
Welcome to Building Your Sales Engine. I'm your host, Mark McGraw.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Building Your Sales Engine. I'm your host, Mark McGraw, and it's, as always, good to be with you. Today on the episode, we have Dustin Schadt, who is fantastic at thinking through comfort zones, breaking through comfort zones, getting goals established. How do you have a structure and a framework for what you want to go accomplish and how you can break through to get to even higher levels? So whatever you use to take notes, open it up. I'm a digital guy myself. But, pen, paper, notebook, iPad, whatever it is that you're using, make sure you have it handy with you. Even if you're on the treadmill, find a way to go capture some notes along with Dustin today, because I think he's got some really great stuff to share with you. As always, like and subscribe to our episode so we can continue to bring you more and more great thinking and great content as you continue to build your sales engine. All right, let's dive into the episode. Everybody, welcome back to Building Your Sales Engine. I'm your host, Mark McGraw. I am here with Dustin Schadt, and we are going to talk about goals together today. Dustin, man, I'm so glad you're here, and I love this topic that you brought forward to us. So thanks for joining the episode with us.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. This is great. Thanks a lot for having me today, Mark.
And Dustin, you're in the packaging business. You're in sales leadership, and you're helping to mentor folks. Share with everybody a little bit about you and your background and all the above. By the way, rumor has it you like dad jokes, so you and I, kindred spirit right there with that. So
yeah, I'll be careful with those today, I promise. So my career started 27 years ago in packaging, working for folding carton manufacturing. So for those of you who aren't familiar with folding cartons, the paperboard packaging that you might get your beer and your cereal and that lighter weight paperboard. I've been focusing on that for my entire career. So early on, I was started as a designer in the field, worked my way into sales, and I've spent the rest of my career there. Multiple companies over the years taking on sales leadership roles. What I've really enjoyed about those leadership roles over the past couple of years is the opportunity to mentor and to see other people succeed by setting their goals and helping encourage them to pursue additional goals for themselves. Sometimes I consider myself the dream manager. Although I'm not really encouraging people to leave the company, sometimes it's the best fit for them to leave the company and pursue something somewhere else. So I help them really find out what their strengths and weaknesses are and help them decide what's the next frame for their future. Is it upward mobility here? Is it staying in the same position but increasing their own sales, their book of business? Or is it somewhere else that I can help them achieve their goals? And so I've enjoyed that over the years. Been with 3 companies in that type of role. My current role is with a paper distributor, packaging board distributor, where we're actually supplying the raw material to printers, to the packaging companies that are out there making that final package that's going to the brand for final development and packing.
And one thing in the conversations we've had leading into this is you love to mentor people. You love to make a difference in other people's lives, and that's just such but we're kindred spirits in that one for sure.
Yeah, it's a passion. I think if I were doing this for any other reason, I wouldn't be effective at doing it. So just being with people, seeing their strengths and helping them hop to that next level is just so inviting to me. I said in one of my first sales manager roles is I want every single one of those sales reps to make more than I do. That's my goal. Seeing them hit that next level of success where, they've succeeded. And that is more important to me than the dollar on my paycheck any day of the week. So
that's wonderful. And by the way, I think the sales leaders that I've spent time with that are really the best at their craft. Yes, they're goal driven. Yes, they have a plan. Yes, they want to get things done. They want to exceed their numbers. They also want to see the development of their people, and that leadership sort of comes through in their motivation and what they do. And so you've got that, you got that covered many times over. Got to ask real quick before we dive into the goals piece. You mentioned Dream Manager. You weren't happening to reference the book, The Dream Manager, were you by chance?
I was.
So we didn't talk about this, but take a second on the book, which I think is a phenomenally good book. And I actually have gotten to know the person who that book was written about. So share with everybody a little bit about the Dream Manager, which you referenced.
Yeah, the Dream Manager. I mean, to me, it's a person that really sits down and helps each one of those people that either report directly to them or maybe it's a peer, help them develop those goals, that mindset, that mission, those values that are most important to them, and really filter out, hey, is this the right trajectory for your career? How can we help you meet that trajectory? That's been a couple of years now since I've read the book, so I can't directly reference anything from the book, but that's what the takeaway, the summary was with me, is that, everybody's where they're at now to get to somewhere else, right? Whether it's within that same job or not, and they need that person to help mentor them towards that. And so when I called myself the Dream Manager, that's what I strive to be at all times, is that person that can really help be the conduit for those people that are looking for the next step in their career or the next step in success in their current role.
And help the people achieve their dreams. Is just, to me, a key ingredient to that. And so I love the fact that you referenced that for sure.
And sometimes those are personal and not professional.
Yeah, a lot of times, and that was a big part of the book. And again, unless I'm wrong, it was Mary Miller who that book was written about. And I've met Mary a number of times, maybe a dozen times. And she owned a commercial cleaning company, and a lot of her employees, they had different challenges and things going on, and she would help them go get to their goals. She would, if they needed some documentation, if they needed help with dental care, she would find a way to go get things accomplished for her people. Because one of the things that she found, and I think we can all learn this lesson, is that a lot of times our people that we're mentoring and coaching and training, they have things that are non-sales related that are blocking them and taking mental energy that keeps them from getting to their goals. So if we can help eliminate those and make those easier, they get to their sales goals better and easier. So that was a little bit of that.
Absolutely. Remove the clutter.
Remove the clutter, which we should dive in and talk about that, Dustin. Because, Dustin, you have developed a acronym and a framework for goals. And, let's take that framework that you have and let's just break it down. So why don't you share with everybody the framework for goal setting that you use, and let's talk through those piece by piece, because I think you got a really cool process here.
Yeah, so just a few years ago, to be honest with you, I was just sitting down and I was like, how do I want to achieve the goals that I have ahead of me? And I was sitting down with other employees and teaching them about setting their own goals. And I decided that one thing that really stuck out when coaching and mentoring the people that I was helping achieve their goals is that there was a lot of clutter impacting them. And so I started really focusing on that. I really started focusing on what are those things that keep people from truly devoting themselves towards a goal, to staying focused on that goal, despite how hard things get. And I decided that goal setting out there, we talk about, evaluating the plan. What are our goals? What is it that we want to achieve? Are they smart? Are they measurable? We know the SMART process. But what about the foundation? And the foundation, I decided, had to be removing that clutter from our lives that were inhibiting us from making the goals. We had to build that foundation first. And sometimes that came with the idea of realizing our greatness, right? They go hand in hand. Sometimes if we don't realize that we are strong enough, that we were made for greatness, that it's hard for us to actually remove that clutter, and
Mm.
vice versa. If we don't remove that clutter, it's hard to realize that greatness. So I started with that premise, and all of a sudden I developed an acronym called REACH. Okay, we want to reach our goals. We want to reach other people with our goals. So the R stands for realize our greatness and remove the clutter. The E stands for uh, evaluating our mission, establishing our mission, evaluating our goals, and executing the plan to achieve our goals. The C, which I really love, or the A, I'm sorry, I'm skipping letters here. So, is accounting for our time and acknowledging where in that process we might have failed or we might need to work a little bit harder on in the future when we're to dig deeper to achieve that goal. The C is to celebrate the successes that we have and to challenge ourselves to do better. And I personally like H the most. Hone our skills. What
Mm.
are those skills that we need to achieve our goal, to achieve our goals? And in the process of honing our skills, we also need to help other people. And for me, that's the end of it. We have to help other people. It just when we look at the world today, there's so many people trying to do everything for themselves. And so if we truly like to reach out and if we truly help other people, as we're reaching out in such a way that we're creating a bigger community that's driven towards their greatness, towards their success, and achieving things that they thought were impossible to achieve before.
Well, let's take each one by one, and let's talk a little bit
Sure.
about how someone might use that framework to help them with their goals and get them to where they want to be. So, if we started
Yeah.
with, and I like how each one of these actually, in many cases, the R, for example, has both the word remove and realize. So let's start there. Maybe we start right at the beginning, of course, but we start with the remove the clutter. Why did you piece that in? And let's talk a little bit about that because I couldn't agree with you more in terms of the importance of doing that.
Yeah. So removing the clutter, I'll go with personal experience. There were so many times that I set out on something and realized there was these little things that were interfering with me really achieving that goal. I'd get started on it and feel like it was the most important thing. Then I get a couple days in towards achieving that goal and I'd be like, whoa, I got to solve this first. I have to take this out of my life before I can do that. And I think that's important to do because sometimes we clutter ourselves with things. So let me tell you a great example. So I walked into a client when I first started in sales and walked into their office to talk to them about this new design and packaging they wanted to establish. And the client looked at me blankly and she's like looking around her office and she's like, oh, let me move something so you can sit somewhere. She had stacks and stacks of paper everywhere. And we got to talking about the goal and her phone was ringing and she was answering it. And there was all kinds of distractions that she had. And I found out no matter what we did with this packaging project, nothing was going to ever happen. Fast forward about a month later, nothing was happening. I called back on the same company. I walked into the office. It was immaculate. New person in charge. New person in charge says, I see all the work that you've done in designing a new package for us. Let's talk about how we execute this. And so we sat down there and we did business. There was no distractions. There was nothing else. We had to remove all these impediments around us. And the the difference between the two people was one knew that they had to do that in order to get the job done, and one was struggling to figure out what was in the way.
Yeah.
So I think removing the clutter physically means a lot, but there's also a lot of mental clutter that we
Well, the
put.
physical clutter ends up
Yeah,
removing the mental clutter in some respects.
true.
I remember reading the book by the producer of The Biggest Loser.
Mm,
And one thing that stuck with me, it's funny, you read a book, and I read this ages ago. A lot of times you're not going to remember 320 pages, but you remember one thing. This is the one thing I remember. What the gentleman said is that in The Biggest Loser, when they would go to the homes or the apartments of the people that were the contestants, they would go into their bedroom, and he said every single time, 100% of the time, when they found the people in the before state, their bedroom was a shambles. There's drink cups half filled, the bed's not made, there's stuff absolutely everywhere. And the first thing that they do in the process is they clean up the bedroom. They clean up they make that place so that when you wake up every day, your mind is clear and you don't have the clutter physically in the room. And that, to me, is such a good metaphor for all of the things that we have in our lives. Sometimes we've got to get rid of those things in order to make space for new things. And I hear that in your R in the Reach format.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I can personally attest to the fact that once I was able to remove physical clutter, and a lot of times it helped me be able to focus on the plan better.
Yeah.
In a lot of cases, like you said, the direct connection to the mental. There are some other mental things that we do struggle with that can be true clutter. But I think getting that physical in mind, and I've heard it so many times, make your bed as an expression to get things in order, right? So I love this because I've never read that particular book, but it is a good analogy towards everything else in our life. Make your bed.
And Dustin, one of the things that I think when you bring that up, I think another thing that comes to my mind with it is that a lot of times what we end up doing is we want to add and stack, right? But you only got 24 hours in a day. At some point, you've got to remove. You've got to take things away. And until you start to remove things, there's no space for new things. So as I'm thinking about this with you, as I'm thinking about implementing this, I got to think about what do I need to remove and take away such that there's room in my day and my calendar and my life to add something new in. So if somebody's going to, in an example, if they're going to decide I'm going to wake up early to exercise, they're going to have to remove something, which might be this thing called sleep. Or they've got to make space for it in another way so that it frees us up. So a question I think folks might be asking themselves is, for the coming year, what is it that they need to remove that will make the space for new things to come in that are at a higher, better level? So
That's where the mental side comes in. I think one of the clutters that we all have to face is fear. Yeah, right. And one of the fears that I think is biggest when it comes to achieving goals, both professionally and personally, is the fear that we have to give something up in order to attain that goal. And that analysis, that process, that evaluation of what it is that we have to give up if we're really truly focused on this goal.
Yeah, David Sandler is a big, and I know you're a baseball fan too, but David Sandler had an expression for it. He said, you can't get to second with one foot on first. You have to give up something over here in order to get to the next base. You got to give up that security, and that's what's taken on. And from a fears point of view, it's I've coached goal setting for probably 19 years now. And to me, it's the number one reason why people don't set goals in the first place is they're afraid that they're going to have to face the fact that 12 months from now, maybe they didn't accomplish it. So by setting that goal, you're putting yourself out there to say, I'm going to go do this. And then there's a fear of what if I don't? How am I going to feel about myself? And unconsciously, the first thing people do is just choose to not set it in the first place.
Right. I agree 100%. I have friends that are addicts, and first thing that they realize when they're addicts is, gosh, there were some really enjoyable moments about being that addict, but I know it's preventing me from doing what I really need to do. And there's a fear in that, right? I've given up a part of me that's been a part of me for so long. What's going to happen when I truly go down this road one day at a time, giving this up and getting on to the rest of my life? So yeah, totally.
Yeah, you're
totally
giving up your identity when you give up something, and that's a hard thing for people to do, without a doubt. Anything else you'd add to the R side of things, and maybe we look next at the E, establishing the mission and evaluating the goals.
Yeah, that's a great place. I think mission or value statements are so critical in order to keep us focused. We have to have a why. Why is it that we want to achieve our goal? What is it that we are trying to accomplish? Because without that why we are doing what we're doing, at some point, it's going to get difficult enough that we'll give up if we don't have that why, that reason in the first place. And I think that starts with a mission. That starts with some type of value statement, and my wife and I actually sat down about 20 years ago and we said, what's our mission as a family?
Mm.
And we sat down and we wrote out that very personal mission for us and for our family. And we state it every day together that we're together. We state
You
that
say it out
too.
loud every day?
We do. We say it out loud, and it's very faith based and personal, like I said. But we say it out loud every day that we're together to help us guide those principles. Because no matter what we do in parenting, no matter what we do professionally or in the house, we try to tie it back to that mission. And I think that's the purpose. We should also then evaluate what is it that we are trying to accomplish ultimately, and to write that down and I will approach. This is what I am. This is what I will be doing in order to achieve that. And I think what that helps us develop from there, we can start to look at our goals. We can start to look at those achievements that we want to do and create those habits in order to reach those goals. So I think, yeah.
I love that because it really when your values are clear, your goals actually to me become easier to accomplish. When you know what's true about yourself. There's an exercise, Dustin, we do from time to time, and people can take this and use it themselves, is to go evaluate, and you can pull up a list of values on the internet, reach out to us. We'll send you a copy of it if you like. But look at the values and look at what are the top 5 values you want more of in your life, and what activities that when you're doing them, you're getting closer to those particular values. And that's a really good exercise to go through to start to help develop, if you will, what's important to you. So ultimately, you get your goals down. But that's just something we've seen. You probably have a set of tools or thoughts that you have around that too.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, from that point, asking your questions, developing those key things that you are in life, right? I am a father. I am a husband. You know, I'm a faithful Christian, whatever it might be. Um, how does that define what your next set of goals
Yeah.
are? I'm a writer. I'm a baseball enthusiast, as you can see what's behind me. So it's like there's certain roles that you take on, and how do you want to use that? Is there a goal behind those different roles? Yes. In some cases, being a father, many, you know, uh, being a mentor and a sales exec, many, right? So you have to write those things down, and they have to be measurable. Obviously, I think we don't need to belabor that. I think the goal setting process is something we all kind of know, but I think it's first building that foundation of how do we set those goals? And the first is to know who we are, what our mission is, and what do we want to do with that mission. And then the goals kind of come naturally. And then we can start to uh, establish that plan, really execute a plan uh, for attaining those goals, creating those little habits every day. I want to write a book, right? This reach that we're talking about today is in the process of being put in writing. How am I going to attain that? I need 30 minutes for so many days, right? So that's the incremental goal to get to the final goal. And you have to be able to set out that plan for each of those goals you're trying to achieve, how you're going to attain it.
So in the case of the E, as someone's thinking through the framework, the E is establish the mission, evaluate the goals are, execute the plan. If you were writing a book, as an example, that would be X number of minutes every day, probably the first thing in the day. Get that work done. You're reminding me of a wonderful book, by the way, that if anybody is interested in a book on and around procrastination and getting work done, I don't know if you've ever read the book. You've heard of The Art of War. This is The War of Art, and a wonderful book on how to make sure that you do the work that's necessary to accomplish something. And it's actually about writing. Stephen Pressfield, I think, is the author. But under E, you've got to establish the mission, get the goals together, the framework there. So if you understand the values, now you get your goals. What are the things that you're working towards? You mentioned SMART goals earlier. I think a lot of people are familiar with SMART goals. Anything else that you think about when you think about stating or making sure that you crystallize the goal?
Yeah, I mean, you definitely want to be specific with it. When I say specific, okay, what is it that I'm trying to achieve, and when do I want to achieve it by?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think that's the thing. If you don't have like a time frame in mind for when you want to accomplish that goal, I think it keeps being that branch that you can't reach when you're climbing a tree. You're like climbing and climbing and climbing. You're losing your footing all the time. If you don't have that, um, and at the same time, if you don't create those measurable steps as well, those little steps that you have to do, those little habits to create those incremental goals, then it becomes so difficult to get up. Like, back to the tree example. If I'm climbing a tree and I see a branch 10 feet away from me, I'm only 5'4". I'm not going to reach that, no matter how high I try to jump and risk my life at that point. I need those incremental branches along the way. And I think if we do that when we're writing our goals and figure out that plan, executing that plan, um, that's exactly what we need. We need those little branches to step on in order to achieve that goal.
Yeah, I heard somebody say that sometimes we've all heard about have aggressive big goals, and I'm a big fan of that, by the way. But at the same time, in the moment, sometimes you need very small goals, and procrastination can come from having a goal that's too big that you don't know where to start, or you don't feel confident and capable of being able to start. So
Mm.
sometimes having some small goals is helpful to get momentum. You know, I could see somebody who wants to write a book and they say, well, I'm going to spend 4 hours a day writing. And yet they've never spent 4 minutes yet writing. And so you might need to start with, I'm going to spend 4 minutes every day just to get the momentum going and start a streak. So I think it's a good way of thinking about it. So if you're at that second step, you've written down the goals, you've got them captured. You're going through the process. What's the A, and how does that fit into the goal setting structure?
A is really about accountability. We're going to account for our time. How did we spend that time? We set those incremental tasks, like you just said, 30 minutes a day, first 30 minutes of the day. How did we divide up our time in order to accomplish that task? Did we wait till the last part of the day when we're probably foggy and we're probably ready to just be done? To make it effective, we need to take the best of our day. And sometimes for me, it's when I wake up. For some people, it's on their lunch break, right? For other people, it's at different times of the day. Make sure you account for that time where it's going to be most effective in achieving the goals and doing those steps. So I'm a big planner guy.
Mm.
I love my written planner. I'll even use it digitally sometimes, but for the most part, unless it's an appointment where with a set time, I'm writing it down. I'm blocking my time out for certain things that need to be accomplished in order to achieve that goal. And if I've got the idea that I want to write for 4 hours this week, I'm writing that half hour, half hour, half hour, 1 hour, half hour, 1 hour, whatever it might be, in order to achieve that time that I have set aside. And then I'm looking forward to see how that time measures up to my final goal, which is having that manuscript in place, right? So I think this applies to everything. This the sales goals. We want to achieve. Uh, you know, we want to get 50 new contacts, and we want to have 8 solid accounts from those contacts by the end of the year. Well, how are we to do that? It's by being on the phone. It's by making those connections. It's by being in social media, LinkedIn, developing those relationships, maybe driving to see that customer. How are we scheduling that time? So we got to block out that time, schedule it. And then when we look at it, we have to account for it. We have to measure it. How did we do? And this is the part in the A. The second part of the A, we really have to acknowledge where we might have weak spots,
Mm.
where we might have failed, and really sit down and say, okay, we failed, we didn't hit our plan the way that we wanted to. Let's kind of tweak it a little bit. Let's evaluate. Do we throw too much in there or too little? I mean,
Yeah.
sometimes, and this gets into a philosophy of mine. Sometimes I think I put too little in the plan that I have this downtime. I'm like, hey, let's go do this. It's a complete time waster, right? So I think we just need to account for it and make sure we're using that time wisely to achieve our goals.
I was talking to a friend of mine the other day, and he was saying, and I've felt this way before too, is that I am the least productive when I have the most amount of time. If I haven't blocked it out and I don't know what I'm doing with it and have the discipline, which is, it's really not that hard. You just do what's ever in your calendar at that particular time. You respect the red line, so to speak. That's the red line, says you are here at the course of the day. Follow that guidebook. And if you know what's in your calendar, you've pre-decided on what you're supposed to be doing. It's really a pretty simple, may not be easy, but it is simple of a process to go follow. So in Sandler, Dustin, and I know you're pretty familiar with Sandler. In the Sandler principle, we call it a cookbook. That's one aspect of a cookbook, and a cookbook is the recipe for what are the behaviors that you need to do in order to be successful at something. So 30 calls a day, 2 referral asks a day, whatever it is that you can control, that becomes the recipe or behaviors that, when stacked with other activities, gets you to accomplish the goal and hold yourself accountable to doing it. So weave that in there with those of us who, and yourself included, that are familiar and fans of Sandler.
Yeah, I love the cookbook for sure. And I like that red line, respect the red line. That's so important. I've always been good at writing things down. But you really have to respect that. I mean, there's so many times just because you write it down doesn't mean it's going to happen. It takes the follow through of that, and that's why we got to account for our time for sure.
Yeah, without a doubt. And every time I just think to myself, every time I don't do what I said I was going to do, I'm taking a little chip off of my confidence, because I'm if a friend didn't show up for an appointment 3 times away, 3 times in a row, you'd start to feel bad about that friend. Well, think about ourselves. If we don't show up for ourselves 3 times in a row, unconsciously we start feeling, bad about ourselves for the fact that we're not living out that that accountability in the reach format. So,
I love that. That's awesome.
Let's drop to C and talk about celebrate.
Yeah. So, I mean, the C is kind of a mixed bag. We have to challenge ourselves to do better. But before we do that, let's look back at what we just did, and let's celebrate the successes we did have. And I think it's easy as goal-oriented, hard-driving individuals to set our expectations pretty high and to be critical of ourselves. And sometimes it's hard to just sit back and say, look, I did well on these areas. Let's celebrate that. So we just acknowledged our weak points. Let's celebrate our good points too, right? And I think in so doing, it reinforces, gosh, that was a great reward. That was great to reflect on those things that I did do.
It fuels the tank almost.
Yeah, it really does fill the tank, fills the bank, whatever way you want to think about it. So we always talk about putting little deposits into the savings account, right? So you can withdraw from it later, So we talked about that in parenting. Hey, you can tease your brother and sister all you want, but like every once in a while, you got to put something in that bank account before you make that withdrawal. So, it's the same way when we're talking about goal setting. Let's just make sure that we truly celebrate and encourage ourselves for where we are finding success. And this goes back to the mission that I talked about earlier too. So the great thing about a mission is when we have a mission and a value statement, at the end of each day, we can go back and say, how did I live back my mission? It's a great analysis point just to examine our days and say, okay, pinpoint our successes, pinpoint our failures, and make that resolution. And that's the C here. The C is celebrate our success, but challenge ourselves to do better. So what is it? Where is it that I acknowledge my failure? Now I need to celebrate the successes I did have, and then challenge myself to do better, mixing all that together. So I think it's got to be a balance. Otherwise, you'll give up.
You will.
You'll give up. Absolutely.
a guy that I'm a member of their organization. The guy's name is Dan Sullivan, and he talks about the fact that if you're on a destination and you're starting to walk and you look out at the horizon and you're walking towards the horizon, you actually never get there because the horizon always moves. And I think with goals, it can be a lot like that. Is that sometimes we're so hard on ourselves and we're so wanting to achieve something. And once you get closer to whatever that is, you move the destination. It's just natural for us to do it. And so if somebody's going to get, I'm going to make up a number, if their goal is to get to, let's say, $1 million or whatever that is in their quota or their sales, and they get closer to it, high achievers are going to make that $1.3 million. They're going to say, how do I get to $1.3 million? And as a result of that, the goal is always moving. And sometimes you cross that finish line and sometimes you don't. But the goals are always being raised. And so it's great to celebrate those things as you go, because again, it motivates you. So I love the fact that you've incorporated that in the flow. Dustin, the last one's the H. This one is near and dear to my heart as a trainer. Tell us about the H.
Well, the H is twofold, just like everything else we just did. So, one of the things, we've kind of gone through, we've, removed our clutter, we've realized our greatness. We've gone through that execution state where we established our mission, evaluated our plan, and executed. We've accounted for our time and acknowledged where our weak points might be, celebrate our success, and challenge ourselves to do better. But now we might have skills we have to hone in order to achieve that goal. So I find a lot of times it's like, okay, I'm here talking to you today, Mark. You represent Sandler, and Sandler's a phenomenal tool. Maybe I need to hone my skills in sales a little bit better. Maybe I need a little bit of coaching. So that would be a place that we could go to say, okay, these are my goals. This is where I've been to. I've accounted for my time. I've acknowledged where I'm weak, but I think I'm missing something here. Can you help me with that? And having that mentor, that coach, or whoever it is in your life, no matter what your goal are, or how much you've risen in the ranks professionally, we all need coaches. We need coaches at every level, period. And having that partner there to go through that with them, and I think that's one of those skills we need to hone. Sometimes let's take a baseball player. He might need the hitting coach or the pitching coach or whatever it might be for his particular skill set to really help him excel. For us as salespeople, it's usually some type of coach to really help us develop the fine tuning or the encouragement, the accountability coming externally for us to do better. And that gets into the help part, right?
It's the other H.
We want to. The other H is helping others, because quite frankly, I find that if all we're doing is focusing on ourselves, self, there's a failure point there. We get so much inspiration in helping others, and there's so much more benefit holistically for the communities around us if we're helping others achieve the same goals. And a lot of times, helping somebody achieve the same goal that you're aiming for is, competition, but it's inspiration for yourself to keep going down that same road. So you might be helping somebody achieve the goal that you're also trying to do. They might get there before you. Who cares? You're working together to really benefit everybody around them. So
if somebody, Dustin, wants to get better at something, I've just found if they can train it to someone else, they actually get better at owning it.
Sure.
And so by helping others, yes, you're helping them, but you're also helping yourself. Not only are you giving of your time and all of those things, but you're also helping to analyze what is it that you're doing that you can be even better at, because you get highly conscious of that particular skill as you're teaching it. And when you get conscious of it, you get better at it. You remind yourself of things that you used to do but stopped doing. All of these things come together when you actually coach and train. In Sandler, we teach people, go teach other people elements like upfront contracts and the BAT triangle and IR theory and budget questions. By the way, keep the IP and the intellectual property appropriate, right? But go teach it to other people on the team, and you actually get better at it yourself, and everybody wins. So I love the format. I love the framework for it. I love the thinking behind it. I love frameworks because it just gives people a guidebook for what to do, as opposed to somebody's going to start with a blank page and say, write your goals. What you've got right here, and Dustin, what you've laid out for everybody is a framework for how to think about and document and capture the goals that might be in your head, but need to be down on paper and developed into calendars and to-do lists. So love it.
Gotcha.
Dustin, how would people get in touch with you if they wanted to reach out? And you've expressed yourself as somebody who's willing to give. If somebody wanted to connect with you, how would they best go about doing that, my friend?
Yeah, I think there's two ways that somebody can connect with me, maybe three actually. So they can always connect to me by phone, but I'd rather have them send an email first, and then we can go down that road. So email address, my email address through Norcal, which is my current employer, where I'm a sales executive, is DSCHADT at Norcal.com, and Norcal is NORKOL. So DSchad at Norcal.com. They can reach out to me there, or they can look up Dustin Schadt on LinkedIn. And easy to connect with me there. I'm on the platform all the time, posting personally and for our company. So it's an easy way to get a hold of me as well. So I'm excited to talk to anybody about these principles, this outline. It's something that I'm passionate about. So always more than happy to share.
That's awesome. Appreciate you giving of your time, and it's not something that you're doing for a living. So you're doing it just to help other people, and I think that's a wonderful, wonderful way to be and to live. And Dustin, I want to thank you for taking the time out of your day to be on Building Your Sales Engine. Appreciate you a ton for sharing this, and I love that you've come up with this framework. And hopefully, we've given some good souls out there some things to think about as you're preparing and planning for your next year. So again, can't thank you enough for being on the show.
Thanks a lot, Mark. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure, my friend. We'll see you again soon.
All right, take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.